What's up, guys? Welcome to a new day. I'm Stephanie Ryder, and this is the 365 Shares podcast. It's Friday, January 12th, 2024, and this is our 12th episode. I hope you had an awesome week. I hope you have the weekend off and you have either something fun to do or something restorative to do, whatever feels right for you. I am choosing mostly a restorative weekend. I am just on, I feel like the tail end, like the last day or two of being sick, of just, being sort of hormonal and down. And I'm really excited for this weekend because I think that, I don't know that it's going to be like a terribly ambitious weekend in terms of what I'm going to do, but I do have a few social things planned. I'm going to a healing fair tomorrow with my partner's mom, which will be really nice. And then my friends and I and my partner are going to a comedy show at night. So that'll be really great. Comedy is something my partner and I have in common. We both love comedy podcasts and stand-up and movies. And, I think we both have good senses of humor. He's really funny. And he just always notices sort of the same things about people or their expressions that are funny that I do. So that will be really nice. And then Sunday's probably going to be a lot of football. We're into football playoffs. My team is the Eagles. I'm not confident that we're going to necessarily get past the first round of the playoffs based on how we've been playing the past 4 or 5 weeks. But I'm hopeful anyway. I will be watching. So we will see what happens this weekend on Monday with football. But today's topic is trait 1. And of the traits of adult children of alcoholics, the first one is we became isolated and afraid of people and authority figures. And there are so many ways this can play out. I think, especially growing up on the East Coast, I noticed a lot of fear of authority and a level of importance placed on authority that not everywhere in the country and the world shares. There was just definitely a lot of concern of, when I was a kid, we moved from California to Pennsylvania and the bell would ring at school and everyone else would run to class. And I was kind of just sauntering to class. And the girl that they first partnered me with when I moved there that was showing me around was like, why aren't you running? Where's your sense of urgency? The bell rang, we're going to get in trouble. And I was just not really part of my paradigm or the way things were in California. And I didn't realize how much of the sort of stereotypical, laid back California kid that I was compared to all these type A East Coast kids running around. So I think there's some cultural aspect to authority and our relationship with authority outside of just if you grew up in an alcoholic or dysfunctional home. But it's definitely something that I've had an interesting relationship with my whole life, either rebelling against authority or sort of maybe not always respecting authority and, feeling like respect should be earned and not just given just because someone was older or in a position of power over me. But I know there are a lot of people who are afraid of their bosses, and I have been afraid of bosses in the past, or they're afraid of their parents or caregivers or family members. And I have definitely been afraid of, family members in the past. And I think specifically with my family, the thing that I fear the most about my family is that they will all band together and turn on me, because I have definitely had a lot of time feeling like the black sheep in my family. And I've been sort of all the different family roles. They talk about in ACA and in therapy. There's the black sheep, there's the class clown, there's the golden child who's always doing everything right or is in favor. There is the exile who is just kind of lost or ignored or forgotten, or maybe even runs away or moves away. And a lot of us have taken on those different roles at different times. Maybe we're one role to one parent, maybe we're the golden child to one parent, and maybe we're the black sheep to another parent, just depending on where their values are and who they favor. So I think I've worn all those hats. And when I think about fear of people or authority and isolating myself to protect myself from that, I really think about certain members of my family of origin and just feeling like if anything goes down, if anyone gets upset, they're all going to turn on me. And I did feel some of that when I was home for Christmas. I'm taking a break from that. And instead of continuing to try to win favor and like make everyone happy and like me in the hopes that next time there's a conflict, they'll take my side, I'm just going to say, you know what? I'm not going to this isn't politics. I'm not running for president. There's no reason for me to be expending so much of my energy trying to drum up support for myself. If people support me, they support me. If they don't, they don't. And as I've said on previous episodes, I just don't want to spend so much of my mental energy trying to be in their favor anymore. If I am great, that would make me happy. If I'm not, I'm going to go about my life. So that's what I sort of think of when I think of trait 1. And the affirmation for today from the Strengthening My Recovery book is, on this day, I acknowledge the fears I've carried for most of my life, and I remind myself that I am now safe. I take deep breaths and feel gratitude for the people in my life who are kind and loving. I'm Steph, and this is my share. There are a lot of different things that come to mind when I think about isolation and I think of fear of people or authority figures. I think that my false self is very brash and very in your face and never backs down from anyone. But I do definitely have an inner child or a true self that really doesn't want to be in conflict and wants to be in harmony with everyone and wants things to go smoothly. So I think that it's something I'm exploring as I think about my protector self or my false self, who is like a fully formed character because I've needed her all my life, and my true self or my inner child self, who are a little kinder and gentler. One thing I think of is that I definitely have put romantic partners in positions of emotional authority over me, and I've given a lot of my power away in past relationships, even though in some ways I stood up for myself and I was able to say what I want or ask for what I need. There are other ways where I think I let other people run the show in terms of where the relationship was going to go. And I just was watching a few months late, but I finally watched the finale of The Golden Bachelor, the first season of The Golden Bachelor. And I won't give it away. I think it's really good and really interesting and really inspirational because it shows that you're never too old to find love again, whether you had a spouse die or you've had a divorce or you just haven't found the one. And so I love that, and I love the show, and I'm very happy our people in the shows who like sometimes have to go home for some reason. There's a woman who had a family medical emergency. She had to leave pretty early in the competition, and it just is what it is. But for the most part, it's the person who is the bachelor or the bachelorette who has all that power. And it was emotional to watch, especially as it got toward the end of the season. And all the women were really in love with him. He seemed like a great guy. And he was falling in love with a number of the women. And in fairness to him, he was someone who had married his high school sweetheart. They'd been together for decades, and she unfortunately passed away. And he hadn't really dated much in the years between her death and being on the show. So he wasn't like some playboy who's out trying to break hearts or play with people. I do think that he did his best in the show, but there were definitely situations, especially with the women, the last sort of small group of women that was standing, where it seemed like he ramped things up with them as much as possible before letting them down and not giving them a rose and not choosing them. And I don't think he intentionally did it to be cruel, but it did remind me of some situations I've been in where someone who's a people pleaser, like my ex-husband, which is a common, trait of ACAs, someone who's a people pleaser will tell you what you want to hear because they hope that they can give it to you, because they maybe believe it in that moment, or because they're not sure what they want to do, but they don't want you to abandon them, and they want to buy themselves as much time as they can until they get the luxury of making their decision and informing you of their decision. So it was definitely triggering to watch it, seeing this man be in such a position of authority over all these women who are head over heels for him and who like and just so patriarchal. And I know that when they do the Bachelorette, the Golden Bachelorette, it will be the opposite, and there will be one woman with the power, and that will be great. But just the way the show is set up, it just triggered a lot for me of that feeling when I was younger of really wanting to be picked. I desperately wanted someone to propose to me. So when I was in my dating relationship with my ex-husband, there were already red flags that were very evident, but we already had a lot of conversations about things, and I had just moved in, and we actually booked a wedding venue before we got engaged because I knew how far in advance things booked up, and we wanted a Saturday wedding in September, and that is prime wedding real estate. So we actually booked the venue before we proposed, but at that point, obviously he was going to propose. And between booking the venue and him proposing, I went away on a family vacation, which in my mind was like, this is my last sort of family trip without a husband and a partner. And this is my last trip with my family as a quote unquote kid, even though I was in my late 20s. And got back and took a few weeks for him to slowly, piece by piece, come out with the story that he had gotten really drunk when I was gone and gone to a strip club with some salespeople at work that were there to wine and dine him. And he did some things with a stripper that weren't really within the context of a monogamous relationship with me. But I went ahead and married him because I felt like I'd made the commitment, and I just so desperately he was like ready to propose. We had booked the wedding venue. He was having a ring designed for me. I just wanted that, what I thought was a fairy tale ending, so much. And I just gave so much of my power away because I wanted to be chosen. So it's really kind of triggering. And I've never watched fully any other seasons of The Bachelor or The Bachelorette until The Golden Bachelor, but it's triggering to watch people really put themselves out there and wear their hearts on their sleeves and hope for the best. And to be hearing from someone who has 4 women in the mix, or 3 or 2, where he's telling each of them, I love you, in different ways, or he's even telling them, you're my girl, or you're the one. Like, he straight up told one of them, you're the one. And then a few days later, it was like, I changed my mind. And it's so hard to see that. And he says he meant it when he said it, and then things just changed. And I do believe that. But the feeling of betrayal and being blindsided that the women expressed felt really familiar to me. And that was really hard. So I think there's a lot of examples of authority figures. I could talk about a million horrible bosses that I've had. I could talk about parental figures, but I could talk about people who don't actually have any authority over me, but who think that they should have authority, or that want to have authority, and that do everything in their power to act like they're the boss of me. But what really came up for me, just because I was watching the Golden Bachelor finale tonight, was, if we have childhood wounds around authority, we will recreate them in any way possible, whether that's with work, whether that's with romantic relationships. And it's just to check in to myself to say, I don't have to be scared. There's no one who's actually in a position of authority over me except for my higher power. And if I act with integrity, and if I act in accordance with my values, which I honestly don't always do, but I always try, and that's all we can do, then there's no reason to be scared, and there's no reason to isolate. So I think this was good for me to talk about that, good for me to talk about those feelings that came up. And I never really know how to wrap up these episodes. Like, once, in the meetings, when we wrap up a share, we just sort of say thank you. And then everyone says, thanks, thanks, Steph. And they move on to the next reading or the next share. But I think that's it. Thanks.